W6WUH, Larry in California. I took out my Rogers Black Widow, which was a fairly obscure and rare 6-meter AM transceiver made in Venice, California in about 1956. And took it out, cleaned it up, and drew up the layout of the chassis. So we'll just take a little walk through here. There is one other video on YouTube where you can see this radio in operation. But anyway, this is basically a 25-watt AM radio. It's a 2E26 modulated by a pair of push-pull 6AQ5s. It's got a superhet receiver double conversion. And so we'll just walk through the layout here real quick. Oh, sorry. Try to get this set up so we can do this. Here's the 13-tube radio crammed in a very small little box, about 6 by 7 or 6 by 8. Basically, you can divide this radio in half right here. And everything on the right is the transmitter and modulator, and everything on the left is the receiver. It's a 2-tube transmitter, 12AT7, operating as an oscillator doubler. Takes an 8 megacycle crystal, oscillates at 24, doubles to 48 or 50 to drive the 2E26. There's two versions of this radio, the standard and the deluxe. This is the standard. The deluxe uses a 6146, and the push-pull modulator are 6 Charlie Zulu 5s. They're little tiny 9-pin vertical output tubes. Same plate dissipation as the 6AQ5s, which are basically a 6V6, but apparently they can get some more audio out of them to allow the thing to run more power. Anyway, this is what we've got. This is a classic setup, 6AU6 mic amp, speech amp. The switch will allow you to configure it for a dynamic mic or carbon mic. Phase inverter driving the two grids of the 6AQ5s out of phase. Modulation transformer, 6146 final. So high level plate modulation, pretty beefy modulation transformer, considering it's only somewhere between 10 and 12 watts of audio, something like this. On this side we've got an RF amplifier. It's double conversion. The first IF frequency is 10.5 or 11.5 megacycles, and then it's 1.5, 1500 kc for the next 3 stages of IF. We can look here at the layout here and see what the tubes are. Front end of the receiver, 6 BJ6, 12AT7 oscillator mixer, and then 3 6 BH6s for the IFs, 6 T8, which is 3 diodes and a triode all in one envelope. That's this little tube right here. So that's your automatic noise limiter, your detector, automatic AVC, and the first stage of audio, the triode section's first stage of audio. And then the 5687 is 2 triodes, kind of like a 12AU7, a couple of triodes in an envelope for the audio output. Pretty straightforward. Let me show you the way it's built. These things were built in a garage in in Venice, in Los Angeles, and it's a cheap radio. I think it's I've seen Polycoms that are like this too, jammed together. The components are good. The layout is okay, I guess. You know, they've done some things to get stability, like, let's see if I can find it, soldering some of the tube socket shells to the chassis. But, you know, I'm finding flux and, you know, crud in here left over from when they made it. But the quality of the components is good. There's not much to do in the way of recapping. There's a couple of electrolytics, and I haven't even figured out what this component is yet. I'm assuming that it's a paper capacitor, but I might be wrong. I've got to look at the schematic and find out what it is. But all the rest of it are just ceramic capacitors and a few micas, which just tend to be good forever. So that's pretty much it. We're looking at it upside down again. Transmitter on this half, receiver on this half. You know, this thing is AM only. There's no provision for CW, and I doubt that it has the stability for it anyway. No BFO, no key jack, no provision for CW at all. Strictly an AM transceiver designed for mobile operation. Transmitter's pretty classic, you know, little 2-tube transmitter with a 4-tube modulator. And the receiver is surprisingly good. They crammed quite a bit in this little box. This, you know, 13 tubes. Here's my hand for comparison. 13 tubes in this little box. Here you see this is serial number 157. And when you realize that they made this in 10 meters, 2 meters, 6 meters, and 220, and we're only looking at serial number 157, you get a pretty good idea that these were pretty low production. I know that the guy who designed this was a disabled guy. I think his wife managed the production in their garage, and they had, you know, 1 or 2, probably women, building the things. And there you go. So, you know, you just look at it and you see little details. Look at these 2 IF cans, and, you know, they're not square to each other. You know, it's just a, you know, it's just a little cobby all the way around. Little details you don't like. Look at these wires from going to this function switch, and they're, where is it here? Right next to this tie point where the B plus is, the RF is for from the plate of this tube, and it's right next to this function switch. I had to take my my pliers, my needle nose, and move the wires around there because they were just too close. Here's the wire carrying the antenna to the relay. So, you know, the RF's going out on this thing, and this is just all kind of gizwampus. They're not paying much attention to worrying about whether they've got an impedance bump there. They just, you know, there it is. So, what can I say? It may work fine. It may work perfectly fine for what it is. I imagine the transmitter will work just fine, and the receiver probably not too bad. I'm assuming this is going to be kind of on the level of a communicator 2 or something in terms of how the receiver works. The front end tube can be a 6BJ6 or a 6BH6, BZ6, I think. A 6BZ6 is a pretty good front end tube for HF, you know, used in Collins and Hammerlin and some other things. But how good it is on 6 meters, I'm none too sure. But you know, I think for what it's for, local communications and band opening when you can catch it, probably works. Okay, W6WUH, that's the little walk around of the Rogers Black Widow 6-meter AM transceiver.